Hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Shue. I am with Origin Point Mortgage. I've been in the mortgage industry about 15 years total. I am one of the top 5% of loan originators across the country. At Origin Point, we are mortgage bankers and mortgage brokers. So that means that we do a lot of loans in-house at Origin Point, and a lot of loans we end up brokering out for some specialty clients like bank statement loans or investor properties, things that maybe don't fit into the standard bank. Anyways, the two things that I love are my kids. I have an 8-year-old and 11-year-old. The 11-year-old is home, so hopefully she doesn't pop in, but she was sick today. And I absolutely adore Belgian waffles with whipped cream and strawberries on top. My vision for the world is positivity and gratitude. I was just born this way to always see the silver lining. So I always love coming to these classes and co-teaching with Shannon because she always had such great energy and positivity. So I'll let you take it from here, Shannon.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon Shue. I kind of, just a little bit about me as a real estate agent. I'm in the top 1.5% of all agents across the country. Doesn't matter your team size or if you're just an individual agent. I happen to be an individual agent. I own 16 units myself, and I own a self-storage facility. I'm moving into commercial. I'm 1031 exchanging some of my properties that I have good amount of equity over the years and moving that into commercial property. Self-storage has actually been something I've been interested in for quite a while. So I finally pulled the trigger and found one I liked and purchased it at the beginning of this year. I love Vietnamese spring rolls, the fresh or the fried ones. Either one are quite good. And I'm always on a quest for the for the perfect Vietnamese spring roll. And my vision for the world is connection and vulnerability. I really think that we all have an opportunity to connect with one another and really get vulnerable about life. I think it's where we have an opportunity to see one another and fully see each other as who we are. So that's me as a real estate agent and also what I do in my free time. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, we have our agenda today. We're going to talk sort of from a high level, what's going on in the real estate market in general, and then we're going to kind of hone in a little bit more on Los Angeles. I'll talk about the mortgage industry and the roller coaster we've been on the last few months. And then finally, we'll talk about the comparison of 2 different duplexes in LA and the financing numbers behind them. So Shannon, go for it.
Awesome. So generally speaking, the roller coaster ride that we've been on from January to October, we have seen the number of homes come on the market, days on market has been actually increasing and slowly increasing. When we have the rates pretty low between January, February, March, April, May, June, and even into July, you can see that it's we went at 19 days in January down to as few as 14 days in January, in July, and then we popped. You know, we're kind of hitting 16. I just looked at an estimate for September. We're at close to 19 nationwide. And what does that mean? Like, days on market tells us that homes are sitting on the market longer. When homes sit on the market longer, they're not getting enough buyers to want to buy it at that price, or they're sitting on the market because they procured a buyer, the buyer didn't want it anymore and went back to market, right? So you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see things back on market, back to market properties because the buyer just didn't get what they wanted. The seller didn't want to give them any more of whatever it is that they wanted. And so then it has to go back on market. We are going to see less and less multiple offers. Multiple offers, it was just become the norm up until 2021 and even into early 2022, where a home listed, and in order to get that house, you had to compete with other buyers. I am seeing a mixed market when it comes to that. So we are seeing things that are just sitting, but then I have other things that are just flying off the shelf. And that tells me that when it's a mixed market, your days on market will continue to go up because the things that sit on the market and do not get any buyers to come to them, and you're going to see what I thought were 2 duplexes that were just sitting on the market, but one of the duplexes, like I said, just went under contract, but the other one is just sitting. So you're going to see it's a good comparison of like things that sit and then things that get into contract. The other indicator that days on market tells the rest of the country and tells us is as it goes up, it also tells us what buyers are willing or not willing to give or to offer on. So we can see that price is everything right now in the market, and it's not just because of the interest rates, but also buyers are being very wary. They want to be very careful with their capital. They do not want to just put it anywhere. But I also believe that this is a great time to buy. As an investor, I'm a buyer right now. I am actively looking for places to buy that make sense to me. So hopefully that gives you kind of a nationwide kind of view. Can you go to the next slide, Sam? Great. So inventory, this is not in LA, this is actually nationwide. I didn't pull inventory for LA. So we have inventory. Months of inventory is a way that a lot of times the real estate market showcases, are we in a balanced market, a seller's market, or a buyer's market? A seller's market, of course, favors the sellers and they get everything they want. A buyer's market favors the buyers and they kind of can dictate a little bit more what happens. And a balanced market is where more or less the buyer and the seller have to come to some terms and level out the expectations. So that kind of teal line is 2022. And if you look in 2020, you see how much inventory started to tick up. That was just before the pandemic. And then March, the pandemic hit. May is 4.6 months of inventory. We couldn't show a house. We couldn't see anything. So how can we sell a house? So the inventory started to pile up in 2020 until California allowed us to, quote, do business and be able to buy and sell homes by being able to go out into the house itself. So you can see the inventory was quite high for that beginning of 2020. And then with interest rates coming down so aggressively, it really hit the country by encouraging buyers to get in there. So like the pandemic really pushed a lot of buyers into the market and helped them get into homes. When we're under 6 months of inventory, we're in a seller's market. When we're under 3 months of inventory, we're in a hot seller's market. When we're under 1 month of inventory, buyers are left behind. There's just so much demand that there is not enough homes to go around. So currently August, we were at 3.2 months of inventory. So we're still in a pretty hot seller's market. And I know people I hear people say this all the time. They're like, well, I'm going to wait until the market crashes. The challenge I see in Los Angeles, but then this is definitely nationwide, but the bigger challenge in Los Angeles is we don't have enough inventory. We are actually in Los Angeles, we're lower than 3.2. We're somewhere around 2.7. So we are lower than the national average. And that's because we're an expensive market. We don't have a lot of places to build. We don't have a lot of new construction. So for example, like Louisiana has a lot of new construction. They have a lot of land. They have a lot of places to build. They're going to have a glut of inventory compared to LA. But again, still we're very low. We're very below 6 months. So when you have buyers, and if you yourself are a buyer and wondering, I want to wait until the market crashes, I don't anticipate a crash. I need inventory to shoot up past 6 months to even get close to where the buyers have a little more power. But when you look at like 2008 and 2009, when the market fell apart, I mean, we had over 9 months of inventory in some of those areas. So it's a very much it's not a buyer's market. I do not anticipate a strong buyer's market for LA getting into the 6 month inventory mark until well into 2023 at the earliest. And that is if we continue to push interest rates up. If interest rates just ease just a little bit in 2023, I do not anticipate us going anywhere close to 6 months. Easing would be if we can keep it static at 6 to 8%. Versus if we get into the double digits with interest rates, we absolutely will get closer to 6 months of inventory. Buyers will absolutely dry up. They will just say, forget it. At 9.5% interest or 10% interest, I think I'm going to sit on the sidelines and see what happens. That is when investors then get very excited. That's when, like for myself included, I want to get in. I will buy something at 10% interest rate if it cash flows and it makes sense. The interest rate doesn't scare me. I'm interested in the property. I'm interested in the lower interest. I mean, the higher interest rate doesn't bother me, but I'm interested in the cash flow. So just think about that. I think a lot of people get too worried about it.
Shannon, a lot of people I've been thinking about too is the demand, right? So there's still a lot of buyer demand out there. There was a ton of buyer demand in 2020 and 2021. And now that rates are so much higher, a lot of people are on the sidelines because they are worried about their rate, right? They are worried that maybe their payment is going to be much higher than it would have been a year ago because the rate is so much higher. And yeah, that makes sense. But all of those people are going to be sitting on the sidelines. People are still having babies. People are still, their families are growing, families are shrinking, families are splitting. So there's still a lot of, family life is happening out there. And so when rates, let's say, drop again, because the Fed's going to have to increase rates until they think that it's going to finally put inflation at bay. Once they start to drop, all that demand is going to be flooding in the market, right? And so I believe that a lot of these homes are going to be pushed up in price. I don't personally think that we're going to see a huge dip in prices because there's going to be so much demand, right? There's still that demand is there, and it's going to be coming off like all those people that are having babies and everything in the next few months that want to go buy a new house are not maybe right now, but they will, right? Come summertime, maybe. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that one of the things that's going to be in the favor of buyers going forward, especially if you're buying your own home, yeah, you will pay a little bit higher interest rate, but you'll refinance that, and so then you'll be fine in about 2 to 3 years. So I think ARMs, 7 or 10 year ARMs are great because you have a lot of runway to then refinance that property. Really, the feds are holding the interest rates at these higher rates because we need to subside the level of inflation we're at right now. So as soon as we can get inflation under control, we can encourage more spending across the board, whether it's on homes or cars or lumber or oil, like whatever the things we need to buy in order to make our lives work. That's what we're trying to hold back right now.
Exactly, Shannon. So moving on to the mortgage industry a little bit, this little graph, okay, it's just actually from June until September, how much rates have gone up and down and up and down and up and down in 3 months, right? In June, we started around 5%. And by the end of September, we were already at 6%. But look at all those rises and falls. I mean, if you were on that roller coaster, my stomach probably hurt quite a bit at the bottom there. Oh my God. But actually, what that means is that we've just been on a complete roller coaster because as we have all of this inflation in the news and the stock market and the bond market and everything all together makes mortgage rates do this, right? So it's not that the Fed raises rates and then all the rates go up. And then the next time Fed raises rates, it goes up again. It ebbs and flows through every day based on the bonds, the stock market, and the news in the world. So like Shannon was saying, and I talk about a lot, is marry the house, date the rate, right? So whoever you're dating right now for your rate, if you were to buy, you're going to find someone new likely next year when the rates dip. The Fed is planning to increase rates, right? And increase. But I've heard a lot of economists say that there may be some slowing in those increases, or at least some drops maybe starting in second quarter. Sorry, I have a typo there. Second quarter of 2023. So perhaps March, April, May next year, we may see a small refinance boom. They're talking that it might be a mild recession. I'm not saying that the recession will be over in Q2, but that's when the Fed might start easing on those rate increases. And I 100% agree with Shannon that adjustable rate mortgages are definitely more popular right now. And that means, for those of you on the call, it means they're fixed for a certain period and then they adjust. So it's not like you get into a loan and you don't know what your rate's going to be tomorrow. It's usually fixed. So right now, for example, a 7-year ARM that I have interest rate is at 5.75. So that means that it'll stay fixed at 5.75 for 7 years. At the end of 7 years, the rate will adjust, but more than likely in the next 7 years, you're going to refinance. because the Fed will start dropping rates again. They have to. That's how the economy works, right? They're going to raise, watch and wait, make sure inflation is at bay, and then they're going to lower to try to spur some activity again in the economy. So as soon as they drop, those rates drop, and I'm hearing, like I said, again, as early as Q2 that we'll see some rate drops. That's when you go ahead and dump your ex-boyfriend and get in with the new rate, right? And maybe do another 7-year, or maybe do a 30-year, whatever makes you sleep better at night. But know that it juts only on the 7th year. I also was just told, I haven't done a lot of these in my 15 years of mortgage, but they're starting to come out again. And I know they were very popular back in the 80s and 90s, called a 2-1 buy down, where let's say you could get a rate today, just a regular standard rate like we were talking about. Well, on a 30-year fix is probably about 7 now. Okay. So a 2-1 buy down would mean that the seller would help buy the buyer's rate down from 7 to 5%. And it would stay like that for an entire year. And then the next year it would go up from 5%, let's say, to 6%. All the while you might end up refinancing out of this loan. But what's nice is that the seller is helping you get a lower rate. And we could talk about more details if you guys have more questions about it, but there's lots of options out there where sellers who may have their houses on the market for a while that want to sell and not necessarily do a giant price reduction on $1 million house and now have to sell it for 900. Maybe they'll pay, you know, $20,000 or $10,000 or whatever of their proceeds to help get the buyer a better interest rate. So those types of things I'm seeing a lot of rates right now that are temporary, right? As we see these interest rates coming from 7%, they'll probably hit 8% pretty soon. This is like a Band-Aid, right? This is just a temporary loan. But the nice thing is if you get into the market sooner and you do have that little higher interest rate, as soon as you refinance, your house will likely go up in value when the recession is over. After every recession, home prices have gone up. And so you'll be able to take advantage if you were to buy now versus wait until rates come down, then home prices are going to go up, right? It's always one of these things you have to weigh out. So moving on to duplexes. Duplexes are not considered like a single family home or a condo. They're a little bit different. It could be like 2 units in one building with one roof, or it could be a front house and a back house that share a yard. A duplex for owner occupied, you could put as little as 3.5% down. So if you don't own any other property and you want to buy your first house, or you own property in another state or something, FHA will allow you to buy your primary residence with a really small down payment. So on $1 million house, that would only be about $35,000. And that would really help you get into a place with very little down. You also have the option of putting 15% down if you can't use FHA. The best rates out there, though, just to look at return on investment, is to do 25% down. And you cannot consider a duplex a second home. So if you found a great duplex in Malibu or in some lovely area, you cannot use it as a second home. You'll have to buy it either owner-occ or an investment. If you do buy it as an investment, you're required to put at least 25% down and 30% down if you really want to get better rates. They only allow fixed rate loans, at least at my company on investment properties. The adjustable rates, the 7-1 ARMs that we were talking about, are really for owner occupied financing. Okay, any questions so far? We've gone through a lot. Everybody okay? All right, I'll let Shannon go.
All right, so I scoured some duplexes in areas that I often look for in LA, and these are some duplexes that I had found. I actually introduced this to one of my clients who's on the call here. I said, hey, there's this duplex. What do you think of this one? And this is Cayuga. It's on Cayuga in Lomita. It's right on a commercial. It's kind of close to a commercial thoroughfare in Lomita, but it's still inside the residential area. It's just very close. It's 1 street over from commercial. It's currently listed for $999. It's a flip. This happens to be a flipper that flips a fair amount of property in Los Angeles. And she is fire sailing a lot of her portfolio because it's been sitting. A lot of the stuff she put on the market in the last 2 months is just sitting on the market. So this was at $1,129,000 and she lowered it to $1,079,000 or and then she lowered it to $999. It's still sitting. The reason I like this one is it has been updated inside. It's been, well done. There's a washer and dryer in both front and back house. The two houses are separated. They're not attached duplexes. They're detached, two small homes on a lot. What's also great is, and this is always cool about corner units, a corner house is the back house you can access from the side, and the front house you access from the front. If the home has a home on each side of it, you have one long driveway for a lot of the older homes built before the 50s. In the 60s, they started doing more of the new developments where you have 2-car garages in the front, where both cars can drive in. This home is older, so it has the one long driveway, but the driveway in the back also connects you to the home. So it kind of functions as 2 homes. You can also split it much more easily when you put a fence down the center and say, this is my yard, this is their yard, and each of them can have a yard. So you're gonna get more rent that way. When you have washer and dryer and dishwasher, those 2 help with inside the unit. Doesn't matter if it's an apartment or a single family house like this, but you're gonna get more rent also because you can split the yard. They can have a pet, you can charge a pet fee if you want. And then you can collect more rent. So it's a 2-1 in front and a 2-1 in back. They're almost equal in size, but they're not equal in configuration. The configuration on the front house is a little bit bigger and a little bit more open. The configuration in the back house, again, flipped, just same look that you see here, is a little bit smaller in the whole total living space, and most of that is coming out of the kitchen and the common area.
And you said this one is off market now?
This one's currently still on market.
Oh.
If I were to suggest a price that I think we kind of see like, well, let's see what happens, or let's see if we can make this work. I think I would come in at $940, knowing that we're probably not going to buy it at $940. They'll probably pull us up to they'll counter maybe $980, and then we counter at like $955. Maybe they'll counter at $975 and be like, that's it. If you don't want to buy it at $975, we're going to continue to hold it. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in this, but when I have clients that are like, I'll offer $825, I'm like, they're not selling it for $825. It's not selling for $825. They're like, all right, $875. I'm like, it's not selling for $875. It still has a lot of value, right? And so a lot of buyers that kind of think like, let me just throw some spaghetti at the wall and see if they'll take it. Again, the sellers are not, this is an investor in this case, but the sellers are not going to just bite because they're that desperate. Yes, this investor wants to divest their portfolio, but they're not in the desperation mode where they want to lose money, right? So keep in mind, when things get tough, doesn't mean that everyone's just going to fire sale it. And this would be a good example.
It's been on the market for a long time.
I know, right? I think that if really a deal would be, to me, when I think of this one, a deal would be like $950, $945. Meaning like, wow, they're kind of letting it go for a good price. Anything less than that is an absolute deal to the buyer, and the seller knows that, right?
And so this would be a good one to ask for the 2-1 buy down, where the seller helps buy your interest rate down. Instead of doing a $50,000 reduction, maybe they do a reduction in the rate, and that helps the buyers. So
yeah, and I'm seeing more and more listings that have $7,000 towards buyers for buyer's rate, right? And so I just saw one yesterday, $5,000 but they're using that as a bargaining chip to say, we're not going that much lower in the price. Like, you got to offer me closer to list price, right? So keep in mind, there's a limit to everybody's tolerance for a discount. The other thing is on rents for this, because Sam's going to show you some numbers on what it would cost to get into a home, into a property like this. Really, the front and the back house being brand new, everything is new, and there's all appliances included. Assuming you were to occupy one or the other, it doesn't matter. I think the total rents you would get from this would be about, you could probably get $2,700 for the front and about $2,500 for the back, so you're at about $5,200 in total rent. You could maybe squeeze out $150 to $200 more per unit, but let's just go conservatively and go $5,200 total. So earmark that, because now I'm going to introduce the second duplex to you. So this one is on the east side. This is near Highland Park. Also very similar to the one I just showed you, 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-1 configuration on both sides. The front house had been renovated and clearly it was probably occupied by the seller. The back house has a 15-year-old tenant in there that's paying $975. That tenant's not going anywhere. You can cash for keys them, but they may say no, meaning you ask them, will you take my cash and you leave and give me the keys to this property? The county has a minimum of how much you can offer that person based on their age, if they're retired, if they're disabled, or if they have kids in the school district. So those are factors that then fluctuate that cash for keys minimum, but it's anywhere between $15,000 to about $27,000, depending, again, age, disability, kids in the school district, and if they're retired. With that said, you are now inheriting this $975 tenant. It's not going to help your mortgage a whole lot, but it's something. The front house is very nicely done. I think the front house would fetch for that neighborhood probably $3,100 to $3,200. Again, similar. It's $100K less than the $110K less than the last one at $889. So it is a great price. And they were on market for 30 days and they finally went under contract on the 30th day. So that means that they were sitting around just kind of waiting for an offer. So good for them. They did finally get an offer, but total rent that you get for front and back house would probably be about $4,100 because we can't move the tenant in the back. So yeah, if I were an investor, if I were to pick between the two of them, I would pick the Lomita one, the Cayuga one, because I get both units free. Can also split the lot a little bit easier. I'm not actually splitting the lot, but what I'm doing is I'm drawing an imaginary line with a fence to say this is the back house, this is the front house. They rent it as single family houses. So when they rent as single family houses, you're gonna be able to get somebody that would be excited to have a pet and a yard. This house also is kind of configured front and back, but again, it's sandwiched between two homes. So you have one long driveway, which you can see right here. You're looking towards the street. But behind where the photographer is looking is the other house. It's the other part of the house is behind it. You cannot as easily get, your back tenant, your front tenant are gonna park tandem. I mean, it's very inconvenient to have to text them please move your car, I gotta go to work, right? So this is not as easy. You're still gonna rent. It's a great place. There's not enough housing in LA. But keep in mind, you might have to have one of the tenants where if you're living in this, you have the other tenant park on the street. The exterior of this property is not as cute. It's kind of an older color, probably from the early 2000s. But again, the interior of the home has been nicely updated, so it does look great inside. You guys have any questions about these two properties? I tried to find two that are very similar in size and configuration. The prices were a little bit different, but I do think that the investor is going to come down. I actually think this home probably sold close to $889, maybe just a little bit less than that, but not much less.
Shannon, can you talk a bit about the rental moratorium? When is that supposed to end?
Yeah, so the state of California had a statewide moratorium on evictions. And also no rent raises. So during the whole pandemic, I have not been able to raise any of my rents on any of my tenants. The only godsend for me was when someone wanted to leave. I'm like, oh, great, you can leave. Now I can raise the rent. So I've only had 2 people turn over during the whole pandemic, or 2 units turn over in the whole pandemic. I have all of my tenants have paid. Everybody has been paying. So there are tenants that haven't been paying and they have been given a rent reprieve, or they've been given some rent vouchers through the county, through the city, and through the state. There's multiple programs that have been running. That's in order to help with any economic hardship because of the pandemic. Now that we're past that, the state legislature has now taken away the eviction moratorium, which means you can't evict. By the end of this year, December 31st, if you haven't been paying your rent, you can now be evicted. Currently, right now, a lot of landlords are going through and starting the process. You have 60 days to inform them that they are going to be kicked out. A lot of them are sending them out in October, with November 1st right around the corner. It's been a mass exodus of many attorneys and landlords to get their tenant out, and they want to give them more than 60 days. They're like, you haven't paid, as soon as we get into the new year, you're out. If you want to fight me on that, then I'm going to take you to court, right? So a lot of them are preparing right now. A lot of the landlords that have been waiting for this, I think there's going to be a huge backlog when it comes to the courts. So eviction court here in the county, we only have so many eviction judges, and if we have this many cases, like, you just want to get it off your plate. Meaning if you're a landlord, you just want to get those tenants out. You really don't want to take them to court because the line is going to be very long. So that gives you a little idea. And then we can now get back into rent raises, a whopping 3% that you can get in the county of Los Angeles to raise rents on any of your, the city of Los Angeles. County doesn't oversee all but the unincorporated sections. So places like Culver City, Santa Monica, Pasadena, Torrance, Palos Verdes, Hawthorne, Lawndale, all these separate municipalities are going to have their own rent raise maximums and minimums. So for city of LA, it's 3%. It's not a whole lot of money. It's only to keep it with inflation. However, inflation is hovering at around 7.5%.
And not going anywhere, just stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to some financing numbers for the $1 million duplex, the one on Cayuga, roughly $1 million. I put down two options. One is 25% with one as the owner occupied option, and the interest rate for that today is about 6.25%. And the payment is, if you see the total PITI, that's with your taxes, your insurance, everything all together, would be about $58.60 a month. And I think Shannon said if you were to rent it all out, I mean, if you're owner occupying, you wouldn't be able to get all that much rent. You said maybe $2,400. If you occupied the back unit, you could get maybe $2,200
total, 27 for the front, 25.
Okay. So, then you're paying maybe $3,000-ish, $3,500, and your tenant pays the rest. And you get to reap in all of that appreciation and equity, and then eventually you'll get a new boyfriend and drop this rate and get a way better one at some point in the future. And then your investment property option, you could put a 30% down. The rate is 8%, and that has points. Oh my goodness, the rates are very high right now. But it's just because we're so spoiled from the rates we've been seeing. Anyways, at the end of the day, the payment on that one would be about $6,700 a month as an investment property. Shannon mentioned you could maybe get around $4,200. So this would not give you a great return right away. But once you're able to drop that interest rate down, that should help quite a bit. And I've heard, Shannon, rental increases, not in LA, right? Because we can't increase rents right now, but overall in the nation, rents are up about 11%. I've been told. So, those are going to continue to increase. And once the moratorium is over, hopefully those will also be able to increase and you could get a little more.
Yeah, the only thing that a lot of landlords can hope for is, you've lost a lot of money with the evictions. Like if evictions are pending and you haven't been collecting rent for, hopefully not 2 total years or 2.5 years of a pandemic. But let's just say for 1 year you didn't collect rents, and then for you to raise that rent once that tenant is out, great, but then you can't really make up 12 months of lost at $5,000 a month times 12 months. That's $60,000. You're not going to be able to make up that rent anywhere. Even when you go put that unit back on the market, you're not going to be able to charge $10,000 to let me make up for that first year or that year I lost all that rent. No one's paying $10K for a place that's worth $5. So yeah, and also as an investor, when I see these rates, just so you know, I look for seller carry options. I want the seller to carry the note. So instead of paying a bank to do this, I would then see if I am seeing seller financing, especially on some of them that are larger multi-units. You can introduce this, and if you work with an agent that understands seller carry, and it's something that I personally look for seller carry deals all the time, but really knowing how to orchestrate and create a seller carry deal that makes sense for both parties, now is the time, which is why I am definitely a buyer. I want to buy for myself, and I want to buy something where maybe I could get the seller to carry the note for me. And so then I don't have to subject myself to 8% rate with a 2.5 point, with 2.5 points. That's just, whoa,
and it's
that's
very,
expensive.
I mean, the seller has some great tax benefit by doing seller carry financing. So they basically act as the bank. And so if Shannon was buying $1 million place and was putting 20% or 30% down, she'd be looking for a loan of 700,000. Maybe the seller has that much in equity already in their house. And then they don't need a ton of money in proceeds to be able to pay back their loan. So they're thinking, great, you know, now I'm giving Shannon a loan of 700,000. Maybe we only charge 6% interest rate, no points, way better for Shannon. And then that seller has huge tax benefits from carrying a loan. So it's something to think about. Also your lost rent and things like that, you can write off as well for your taxes. It's always better as an investor for your taxes, right? To own investment properties, you have a lot of write-offs.
Yeah.
This one is a little dark. The 900,000, it's not a huge difference in payments there, but you could see you were getting maybe 4,200 in rent on that one. So, you know, if you looked at the investment property side, you'd probably be upside down about $1,500 a month. If you did owner occupied, you wouldn't be able to collect all that much rent, but whatever rent, well, you only have the 975 tenant. So you'd be in charge of the $4,200 a month, really. And that would be pretty pricey to pay for the front house of that place. But again, it's all about that appreciation over time. And as investors look at this as a long-term investment, the 890 place is probably going to be worth well over $1 million in a couple of years. They will have made quite a bit of money. Whereas if they look at their stock portfolio right now, it's very, very dire in the stock market, right? And a lot of investors have lost a lot of money. And so they're looking to take loans. They actually, like Shannon, they would rather take the loan and not use their own money, and keep the money in the stock market. So that's your financing numbers on that. One more thing I was going to mention too, that's becoming a little bit more popular in the mortgage industry is putting less down. So a lot of times you'll talk to your friends and neighbors and family, and they'll say, oh, you have to have 20% down to buy a house. And you absolutely do not have to have 20% down. I even have a program where you could put 10% down on a $3 million house if you were going to occupy it. The big banks will tell you all day long you have to have 20%. So make sure you're looking under, you know, all the rocks, and make sure you're doing your research, because not all banks offer the same things. And if you are one of those who has a lot of money in the bank right now and you don't want to put it in the stock market, or you've seen a lot of it evaporate into the stock market, it may be a better idea for you to put less down. I'm seeing a lot of financial planners recommend that to their clients. And so, and we have another class coming up. Shannon and I will discuss the date and send it out to all of you for November. We're going to do our book club. We do it once a quarter. We're going to be talking about the Quitter's Manifesto. So I'm really excited to read that one. Anybody else?
Yeah, this will be great
talk
for
about or
Jessica
share?
Bernadette. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, don't worry. Okay, well, everybody have a really great rest of your Thursday. Thanks for joining us. I have to run, but if Shannon, I don't know if you want to stay on for a minute.
Yeah, I'll stay on.
Questions. All right,
I'll be here for Q&A for another few minutes. So, and happy to see you out. But yeah, anyone wants to stick around, I'm here.